Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, a place to find connection and a sense of belonging, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we talk about sensitivity and the richness that it adds, the strengths we have because of our sensitivity, and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there. To the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers, welcome. I'm so glad you're here today. I've been reflecting about the episode that just came out this past Tuesday, January 29th, 2020, with Azul Terronez called Influence Comes from Service. And upon reflection, I think I would probably want to rename it Connection Comes from Service. And it's not that there's anything wrong with the title, but this episode has really been running through my mind. And what I love is Azul did such a beautiful job of naming many of the strengths that we have as highly sensitive people in ways that I don't think that I really thought about it before. If you haven't listened to the episode, I would highly recommend it just because I think that there's so many gems in there and I'm still kind of mulling it around in my head, but I want to meld a couple things together. This week in the online HSP course, we were focusing on changing negative messages into our superpowers. And I saw some patterns that came up around people feeling like they don't do enough. They can't keep up with their partners who are non-HSPs. They're lazy. They are not organized. Their thinking is scattered. They make other people uncomfortable. They should be able to control their emotions. That idea of overthinking and overanalyzing things. And I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking about what some of the corrective messages that the group came up with. And it really ties in beautifully with what Azul was talking about. And I think that the overarching message that I want to share is our society puts a lot of value and focus on doing. Success is really about how we can do things, achieve things. It's all about action. As highly sensitive people, we have the ability to do all of those things as well. However, I think that our primary strength is in being, is in how we show up, the space that we can hold for people, and in our presence. We notice things about people. People come and tell us their problems. For me and my family, I tend to be the emotional glue that holds my family together. And I can get into that narrative of when my kids are home and their girlfriends are here that they like watching things on TV that don't work for me. They like going to restaurants that don't work for me. They like to go out and do activities that don't work for me. And I often have that narrative of feeling very different from everybody else. And what I have to remember is when my kids are going through things, they come to me to talk to me about it because they know that I'm a safe place to be. And so it's really easy for us to measure the non-HSP parts in our relationships and feel inadequate. And yet we forget how powerful our presence is. And I had lunch with a friend today that I hadn't seen in a number of years. We've known each other for probably 20, 25 years. And again, this same theme came up, and this was after the episode that I did with Azul, that she was saying people come to her in her position and want her to fix things, and she's not often able to fix things. It's like, my guess is that people come to you because they feel seen and heard and honored and valued, and your presence of being able to really hear them and listen to them is often all that we need. So I really want to spend this episode talking about what are the gifts and strengths that we have? What are the negative messages that come up for us? And how can we reframe that? Because we form these neural pathways in our brains. And so it's almost like we put on these glasses of inadequacy of messages that we've received, how we internalize these messages, and then we go into the world reinforcing these negative beliefs that very possibly have changed. But if we don't take off those glasses of the old narrative, the old story, and create new messages and put on new glasses to experience ourselves and the world differently, we will continue to suffer and give ourselves these messages of, I'm too much, I'm too sensitive, I think too much, I analyze too much, when that's not really the case. And I think it's also really important to recognize that when we engage in systems or with people that are not set up to honor our needs, it's really important for us to recognize that it's the system and it's not us. And a perfect example of this is I'm dealing with an amazing doctor, and the way that their system is set up, I feel like I'm being a pest. That I saw my doctor in November and she wanted to give me some information. She was supposed to email it to me. I've emailed her. I've contacted the medical community, the facility, asking them to send me the information. They haven't. I have prescriptions that every 6 months I have to get blood work done, and she only gives me a prescription for 3 months, so that at 3 months I have to call her. The last time it took a week for them to respond to the pharmacy to fill a prescription. So it's easy for me to have this narrative come up of like, oh my gosh, Patricia's calling again and she's nagging and she can't get off our back. And I have to remember that if this system were set up to respond to my needs the first or at least the second time, I wouldn't have to keep calling to make a deal out of things. And so it's a system that's not effective. But I think that we're so used to feeling like we're doing something wrong, or we feel like we're the squeaky wheel because the systems don't honor us and meet our needs. And I think that's a really important distinction, that it's going to pull for that narrative, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what the truth is. So let's go back to Azul's episode. And I took some notes, and these are in the show notes from episode 59. Azul talks about, if I can play a role, I can be successful. And in some situations, that's what we need to do. I have a client I've been working with, and he works in this system that's really not set up to honor and hear him and his needs. And so we talked about when you pull up to work in the morning, you want to put on your little mask of what role you're playing today, that the way that he responds to conflict is very healthy, very normal. But in this work environment, they feel like he's questioning them when he's like, well, help me understand how you would like me to respond. I'm sorry, I've seen this done before. So in order to survive in this environment, he needs to go, okay, sorry about that. Thanks. So for him to be successful in this environment, he needs to figure out what role he needs to play, because this is not a place where he's going to be seen and heard. And the system cannot acknowledge the healthy way that he responds to things. And he's making choices about how he's going to proceed in this job. But this is kind of what I mean of sometimes we do have to play a role if we want to be successful. Now, for relationships that we care about, we want them to have the room for us to be authentic and genuine, and for people to respond to us in a way that's really meaningful. Azul also talked about he could be very strong, but he felt isolated. And so, again, if we go back to this situation with one of my clients, he's probably not going to have a great sense of connection at work because nobody's really able to see him and hear him there. It's not a system. So he is going to be able to function well, but it's not a place where he's going to have deep, meaningful connections. And then Azul talked about finding the language to describe his experience, because he would feel so much, and that helped him to help other people. And he was able to notice what he was experiencing, which is why I feel so strongly about this podcast, that we start to really name and recognize not only the things that we struggle with, but what our strengths are. Because when we can put language to it, not only does it help us, but it helps the people in our lives who are able to hear that understand what goes on. And emotional intelligence is really all about understanding our feelings, being able to talk about our feelings, expressing them in a way that really works for us. And then some of the quotes that Azul talks about, or Azul mentioned, were, I just need to show up and be myself. And for highly sensitive people, when we're in environments that support us, that's really all we have to do. We offer so much just by our presence. And if we've got wounding and we've been in environments that don't support us, we've had parents or caregivers or partners that don't support us, we've got some work to do so that we can get to that place where we really do understand that we are the gift, that we have such an amazing ability to be present for people. And that in itself is healing, that we don't have to do all of the things that we look at other people doing and feeling inadequate about. And Azul talked about, I can show up and serve. And again, when we know that we can go into a situation and we have the ability to connect, listening is a form of service. Being present is a form of service. Now, we often have this way that we give and give and give and give as a way to connect with others because we receive the message that how we show up in the world is too much. So on the other end of this continuum, and you'll have to decide if this is where you're at, because we're so adept at knowing what other people need and observing things and being able to show up to meet people's needs. It's often how we've had that connection, but it's about continually giving and not receiving. And so it's not uncommon for us to have relationships that are not mutual. They're not reciprocal. We tend to show up to be the advisors, the counselors, the support people. And the people that are on the receiving end of that often do not reciprocate. And because of our own wounding, we think that we don't deserve that. When it shows up in a way that's balanced and reciprocal, we just have to show up and hold space for people, and we're really good at that. And then Azul talks about being observant, sensitive, and he paid attention more, which are really our HS traits. He also said that he's good at thinking ahead and anticipating what people need, which again is another HS strength. What I want to do now is move a little bit into some of the negative messages that came up in the groups for highly sensitive people, the highly sensitive person online groups. I want to talk about some of the negative messages, what I'm seeing consistently coming up across all of the groups, and this is true for me, is that wound of feeling like we're too much and in the same time feeling like we're not enough. And a personal story I can share with you is I'm joining this year-long mastermind for a group of podcasters. I trust the person that's leading it. I know some of the people in the group. Some of the people in the group have been guests on my podcast. It's a very safe place. In this private group, we were invited to post a short video of ourselves answering 3 short questions. Because I know I can go on and on and on. I wrote down the questions. I was the first one to jump on the video because I'm really comfortable on video, and I answered the questions and ended. I figured there are about 18 people in the group, and I thought if all of us take 5-6 minutes, that's going to be a lot of video watching. So I didn't want to be too much. So I got on, was very brief. And then other people came on and their videos were longer, but they're like, hi, I'm so-and-so, and this is what I do, and this is what I love doing, and I'm passionate about this. Then I went into the wound of not enough. I wasn't personable enough. I should have shared more. I should have been more personable. And then people were responding to comments like, I love what you posted, and I'm really into this, and I see you're doing that, and let's collaborate. The only thing I could come up with was like, I'm looking forward to getting to know you. Again, the wound of not enough. I share this with you because if we have the wound of too much, we're also going to have the wound of not enough. What my plan is to go back into the group and post a video in a separate thread and just say, hey, this is what came up for me. The other thing that happened was I started to go into comparing. This person's so much more successful than I am. This person's so much more articulate than I am. This person's doing all these things. And we're doing a hot seat where every week somebody shares about something they're struggling with and gets feedback. And I'm going through this like, I have so much I'm struggling with, like, I don't want to do it. And so again, it's that comparing and that feeling like I'm not enough. And so what I plan to do, and I've had to honor that I just haven't been in a place to do it, is to hop on and share what came up for me. And then I know that this is going on for other people. And if it is, they can come and talk to me, because the mastermind is really about the skill set. But for us as HSPs, we often have this sub-layer that goes on of the things that I'm sharing with you, the too much, the not enough, the doubt, the insecurity. I need to talk about that. That's not the focus of the group, but what I want to do is share what I'm observing and what I'm feeling and letting people know that I'm a safe person. If that's going on for you and you want to come to me, you can. And I have reached out to 2 people that are in that group privately and shared what's going on, and I feel really supported in that. And this is a way that I could end up having a negative message like, oh, I just want to talk about my feelings and nobody else is going through this. And how come I always have to talk about what's going on and process and people are going to be annoyed with me? Or I can see it as this is what my strength is. This is what my gift is. I can hold space for people that are going through this. This is what makes me an amazing coach and facilitator, because I'm really very aware of what the subtext is, the HS feelings that go on underneath the education. And I can respond to that. And so it's a way of taking this negative chatter and reframing it and putting it out there in terms of a strength. Some of the messages that came up in the group, there was a lot around I'm lazy, I'm not organized, my thinking is scattered, I don't do enough. So some of the corrective statements were, I value self-care and am in need of rest and recharging. I'm going to repeat that. I value self-care and am in need of rest and recharging. And then the one about feeling like I'm organized and my thinking is scattered. I process more information on a deeper level. I process more information on a deeper level. Another one of the corrective statements around this belief system is, I'm good at trying new things and enjoying the moment. I trust my process and I take the time I need. I trust my process and I take the time I need. Somebody had said, I make other people uncomfortable. And so the corrective statement was, I'm not afraid to feel. I'm in touch with my emotions. I'm not afraid to feel. I'm in touch with my emotions. I should be able to control my emotions better. I feel things deeply. It's healthy. It allows me to be strong and to be myself. I feel things deeply. It's healthy. It allows me to be strong and to be myself. And then that message of you overthink things, you overanalyze things. I see things that people don't. I see things that people don't. I should be able to get more done. What I do is valuable. What I bring is valuable. This goes back to what I started with is my belief is that our primary strengths as an HSP are how we show up in the world. It's about our being. And when we compare with the doing, we can be successful. We can be just as successful as people that are non-HSPs. But I think it's harder for us to acknowledge the value of our presence. So I'm going to say that again. What I do is valuable and what I bring is valuable. And then finally, I've got somebody in the group and I have her permission. Probably had I asked everybody, they would have given me permission. But coming from a therapist background, I'm like, you don't say clients' names, you don't mention anything. So I err on the overside of caution, and everything I see about podcasting says people love to hear their names, mention their names, and having a therapist background, it just scares the you-know-what out of me. Kiki Lucia is one of the members in her group, and I do have permission to share this. So I'm going to read you her negative statement and her strength statement because they're just so beautiful and powerful. So her negative statement is, your needs are too big and no one else is ever going to be able to fully show up for you or your needs. And her statement was, you are so beautifully in touch with yourself, which is a gift to yourself and others, and everyone is doing their best. You are so beautifully in touch with yourself, which is a gift to yourself and others, and everyone is doing their best. And her other statement was, I overwhelm others with my emotions. I teach others by example how to feel deeply and experience the wide range of human emotions. I teach others by example how to feel deeply and experience the wide range of human emotions. I just think that these messages are so powerful, and I emphasize this to each of the groups this week, and I'm going to emphasize it again to you, the listeners, that we have this negative chatter that runs in our head constantly. I'm too much, I'm too picky, I'm too this, I'm too that. We may be hearing it from people in our lives, and we are probably doing it to ourselves. What I would really encourage you to do is to start taking note of those negative messages. I think I've shared this before. Like, I'll go to a restaurant and I'll say, like, I'm your problem person to order because I have some special dietary needs. And I've really tried to stop saying that. But those are the ways that this can show up for us. Keep a notebook, a piece of paper with you. Notice when you have those thoughts that I'm too much, I'm too needy, I'm analyzing too much, whatever it is. And see if you can't come up with a corresponding strength. You want it to be in the present tense, I am. You want it to be about being, not doing. You really want to see what the strength is. So some examples are, if I'm thinking that I'm stubborn, the corresponding strength is I'm incredibly persistent. With this mastermind, we're looking at our ideal schedule, and the person that's running this mastermind, Melvin Varghese, he has the podcast Selling the Couch. I love Melvin. He was a guest on episode 5. If you haven't listened to it, I'd suggest listening to that episode. It's great. And he's incredibly detailed. And when I see the things that he does, it makes me incredibly anxious. I'm relatively structured, but compared to Melvin, I feel like I'm loosey-goosey all over the place. And he asked us to look at our ideal schedule. It sent me into this frenzy. And then I felt like I was going down these rabbit holes trying to figure out how many clients I need to see a week, how many clients a week work for me if I'm running the HSP online course, how much do I need to charge, how many groups do I need to run? And I felt like I was going down rabbit holes and I got really overwhelmed, and I had to pull back and remind myself that this next year being in this mastermind is going to pull for me feeling uncomfortable, having to look at things that I don't normally look at, figuring out what works for me and what doesn't. And I know new things tend to overwhelm me. Once I know what the first step is, I do fine. I'm incredibly tenacious and persistent, and new things are really overwhelming. I've got 2 big projects in front of me that I need to get done in the next week. I want to speak at a conference this year, and I haven't ever filled out a speaker proposal form. And so getting all the paperwork together, thinking about goals and objectives and a time frame, it intimidates me. And so what I know I need to do is to break it down step by step. Dara Hoffman-Fox, who was on episode, I think 17, part 1 and 2, has done public speaking. We've talked. She's willing to support me. Again, this is what I do when I need support, is I reach out to people that I know have the experience that can help me. And then I've been asked to write a number of articles about how to thrive as a highly sensitive person. And I think they want to do an interview with me. It's so much easier for me to sit down and record and to talk through my feelings and to sit down and write. And this is really important. I really want people to know about the trait of being highly sensitive. We have amazing strengths. Often how we're viewed and perceived, a lot of the questions in the article that they want me to answer are about the deficits of being an HSP. And it feels like the view is that it's a problem being highly sensitive. And what I really want to bring to light is, like I've talked about, that when systems aren't set up to be responsive and reflective, then it looks like being highly sensitive is the issue, but it's a whole systems issue or a cultural issue, and really turning the narrative on the gifts that we have to offer, that we make amazing leaders and we have great insight because we really listen and we're attuned to people. And we come up with systems that are often very effective because we don't have an agenda around what we think needs to be done. We really take into account what's working for everybody. I'm going to continue to share about these things because we can be incredibly successful. We can work through challenges and problems. Doesn't mean we don't have feelings that come up. Doesn't mean that we don't feel uncomfortable. But as we learn to do our work, we can sit with the discomfort. We can sit with the overstimulation that comes up having to deal with challenging things, and we can do it well. And we can find ways to get support, to reset our nervous system, and to live the lives that we were meant to live, and to have that sense of connection and belonging. What I'm going to aim to do is to put those positive statements in the show notes. If you go to unapologeticallysensitive.com, go to the podcast page, and then click on the episode, those positive statements about our strengths will be in the show notes. If you listen in Apple iTunes, you can also scroll down and they should be in the show notes. You can really help me out by going to iTunes and rating and reviewing the podcast. I just really think that the more reviews, especially written reviews a podcast has, the more credibility it gets. And so I will put notes in the show notes on how you can do that. If you're interested in working with me or taking the online groups, you can go to unapologeticallysensitive.com and all the information is there. We have amazing strengths and gifts to offer the world. We really are here to bless the world and to do amazing healing. I hope you found this helpful. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's our superpower. Have a blessed day.